When I walk into the United States Capitol, I know every day that I'm representing 750,000 great Americans in the 8th Congressional District. In my belief, we have the best congressional district in the entire country. I mean, we could run the country ourselves much better, but it's an amazing place, and I couldn't have a better privilege and an opportunity. But it has been quite the experience. I tell folks it's been baptism by fire, without a doubt. You know, what may sum up a lot happened in my very first week in Congress. In my first week in Congress, I serve on a committee called the Judiciary Committee. And one of the subcommittees that I serve under is regulation reform. I had an individual from the EPA, an employee of the EPA, testify before our committee. And in that testimony made a statement that said it was pure fiction that government regulation affects private industry. How many people in this room agree with that? I don't see any hands. You know, I literally thought maybe I misunderstood it. And here I've been there less than a week, and I'm thinking, I don't want to cause a scene. But I just kept sitting there, getting angrier. Someone from the EPA saying that government regulation doesn't affect private industry. And so I had to ask him a question. And I asked him to verify if that was the case. And he said, oh yeah. You know, matter of fact, it actually, government regulation creates government jobs. You know, inspectors, compliance officers. Well, I just couldn't handle it. I literally, unfortunately, forgot that C-SPAN watches you every moment. So you can actually see this clip out there. And I gave numerous examples right here in the 8th Congressional District where government regulations have forced jobs from being gone. The last lead smelter in the United States in Herculaneum, in the very northeast corner of our area, was closed right before Christmas. 300 jobs because of an EPA regulation. Let's think about the logic of this. We have the largest lead mine in North America in the middle of this congressional district. It's the purest lead in the nation. Now we mine that lead to ship it to China, hoping and praying that they will allow it to come back after they've smelted it so we can make our own ammunition. That's what the Obama administration did with this new EPA regulation. 300 jobs right there. We have a company in Poplar Bluff, Missouri. 475 jobs. It's closing at the end of this year. And what they cited in the paper, the reason why they were moving to Mexico was government regulation. But I have an individual from the EPA testifying in the first week that I'm in Congress that government regulation does not affect private industry. That sums up the problem of what is going on in Washington, is that you have these unelected bureaucrats that have never left the 5 square miles of the District of Columbia that decide that they want to regulate every aspect of our life. And folks, they're doing it. They tried that with the Blue Ways. This was an issue that we all pushed back on. In my first 6 weeks of office, we were able to get a congressional field hearing right here in this building. First time that's ever happened in West Plains, Missouri. And you know what? Over 500 people showed up. And they saw the outpouring. And Secretary Sally Jewell, after a lot of pressure, completely rescinded the Blue Way program, which was amazing. I wish that happened. I wish the Secretary Jewell would do that with this general management plan with the Ozark National Scenic Riverways that we're pushing back and fighting. Those are our rivers. Those aren't the rivers that's owned by the federal government. Those are our rivers. Right. And if you look at the basis of the original plan that happened in 1964, the purpose was to balance our natural resources while allowing recreation. Their plan's not doing that. It is taking away recreation and forcing more towards preservation. And you know, most of the folks who's wanting more preservation of the natural resources, they don't live around here. They live in the big cities. Let me tell you, any day of the week I would drink out of the Current or Jacks Fork River before any day I would drink out of the Missouri or Mississippi. And until they can start keeping their backyard clean, they don't need to be coming in our backyard. And I think we can handle it a whole lot better than what they do. But, you know, you hear a lot of facts going on out there. You hear a lot of propaganda in the news. And you hear people say, there's war on this, war on that. I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to give the Democrats even an opportunity to give credit to what they say that we're doing wars on. There is one war that I have complete facts on that the Obama administration and the Democrat Party is doing on each and every one of us. And it's a war on rural America. You know, we had, Robert or Sean was talking about the coal power rules. Obama and Nancy Pelosi and Harry Reid tried to pass cap and trade in the first 2 years of his administration when they had control. They couldn't pass it. So now you see Obama and his administration trying to implement it by regulations because they couldn't pass it by legislation. If that takes an effect, you're going to see those utility rates double and triple. We use about 82 to 84% of all of our electric generation in this congressional district from coal power. The competitive advantage that we have in manufacturing because of low utility rates would cease to exist. Folks, what about wood heat? That's a new EPA regulation that he's filed this year. His administration. I mean, how many folks in the 8th Congressional District do you think use wood heat? Over 75,000 households. How many households do you think use wood heat in Beverly Hills or New York City? Think about it. So who are they affecting? They're affecting us. You know, last August we had the issue on the Current River and the Jacks Fork. Once again, it was during our farm tour that we had a local Baptist church come up to us and said, the Park Service is now going to require us to get a special use permit and give 48 hours notice before we can have baptism services. I thought, no way. That's not the case. But when we looked into it, without a doubt, it was. And you know, we put a lot of pressure on that, and within less than 24 hours, they rescinded it. We were supposed to be on the Huckabee show. I think they may have gotten word of that. And they knew what they were about to face. It's so unfortunate I even had to pay attention to watch something like that. You didn't have to have a special use permit to do other things in the Current River or the Jacks Fork. But if you wanted to have a water baptism service that they've been doing for decades, you had to have it. You know, I don't know if the Obama administration was afraid that baptisms on the river, if you just dumped in the water, the Holy Spirit may reach out and touch someone else. But apparently they had a fear, which is absolutely ridiculous. But this is another item that I'm talking about. There's a new rule right now that's redefining the waters of the USA. Folks, this is even worse than almost everything I just said to you. Because if they can regulate the possibility with all these commissioners, the puddles of ditches in county roads, if they can regulate your ponds on private property, folks, your property rights are being diminished immensely. Think about this. In 1960, there were 22,000 pages of rules and regulations. Some people get tired of me talking about regulations. But in 1960, 22,000 pages. Today, there's over 174,000 pages. Think about that. 152,000 page increase in 54 years. That's insane. That's unacceptable. You know, one of the first bills that I had before the Judiciary Committee is a bill called the Scrub Act. It was a draft proposal that I had that would reform rules and regulations. And one of the points of it is to require that any new rule or regulation would come back to Congress for final approval. And during the testimony of that, we only had one person testify in opposition. Unfortunately, he was a Missourian, and he was from St. Louis, an administrative law professor. And in his testimony, he said something that I think is very alarming. And what he said is that somewhat agencies rely on Congress. Somewhat. There I go again, forgetting C-SPAN was on, and he's attacking legislation. Folks, every agency was created by Congress. Every regulation that has ever been promulgated is because Congress has delegated that authority. Agencies aren't a fourth branch of government. A lot of times they think they are. And they're trying to regulate a one-size-fits-all approach for every aspect of our life. But what we need to do in Congress is start pulling back this legislative authority. And we need to actually start appropriating funds and holding those agencies accountable instead of just passing continuing resolutions that gives a blank check to the administration. And if we can start doing that, you're going to start seeing that ship turn. I mean, it's almost like the United States is the Titanic. We got to start turning that ship. And you can't turn it quickly, but we got to start turning it. You got to take steps at a time. And I'm one who likes to see things happen quickly. But things don't move quickly in Washington, D.C. Unless they're really bad, like Obamacare and Dodd-Frank and all of that junk. But folks, we got to start taking bites out of the apple, one bite at a time. I doubt if there's anyone in this room that could swallow an apple in one bite. You'd probably choke. So that's why you have to start going slowly. And you got to keep pushing. And sometimes when you're in D.C., believe me, it feels like, is there any progress going? But I'm not going to give up. Because we got our work cut out for us. And we have such a great country. This is the greatest country, even with all of our problems and all the things we're unhappy about. This is the greatest country ever in the history of mankind. And that is worth fighting for. And that is worth making sure that it continues to be the greatest country and the strongest country. And I'm not going to let the policies of one administration or one party to change our entire way of life. It's going to